How's it going? Just before we get into the episode, I want to let you know that we now have a Patreon. I'm pretty sure you know what a Patreon is. It's a way you supporting this podcast. If you want to help us, cover the cost of the studio, all those kind of things, and maybe get a bit of extra content for yourself. If you join at the lowest tier, you will get 48 hours early access to all the studio episodes. And we got some big guests coming on, so it's going to be worth doing that. And if you hit the higher tiers, maybe you get a little bit of extra stuff. We got some custom content that's going to be exclusive to the Patreon that you can't see anywhere else. And at the highest tier, maybe I'll do a little custom content specifically for you. Yep, that's all available. It's patreon.com/Kinell Sinister Cinema. The link's in the comments. If you are interested, check that out. Anyway, on with the show.
Yes, people, what's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show.
Hey yo. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a dope beat to step to. Well, it's been a couple of weeks. In fact, I've been busy. I've had to work things on. I've been doing some rap battle things, all of those kind of things. Been all over the country. And as you can see, I'm on my own this week. We'll be back with a guest next week. It's going to be a big one. You're going to really enjoy that. But I didn't want to leave you without an episode till then. So I thought I'd do a couple of little reviews of things that I have been watching lately. Specifically things I've been watching this week. So I'm going to kick it off with... I'll tell you what. We'll kick it off with new release to Shudder, The Sadness. The Sadness concerns a young couple trying to reunite amid a city ravaged by a plague that turns its victims into deranged, bloodthirsty sadists. It is directed by Rob Jabaz and stars Beren Xu and Regina Lee. Now, The Sadness is kind of an interesting one. One thing that really caught my attention about it is the fact that it's directed by a Canadian dude and it's set in Taiwan. And it's his debut feature. This is the first time he's ever made a film, and he's made it in a completely different country. I don't think he's Taiwanese, but where it's set is an exceptional place for it. Now, from the offset, it does kind of sound like a zombie movie, but it's not really a zombie movie. It's got similar kind of dynamics, the plague aesthetic, which is probably more of a little tip of the hat to COVID and all this kind of thing. But the thing that's really fascinating about this one is that it basically, instead of turning them into flesh-eating monsters, it turns them into deranged rapists. So yeah, pretty lively one from the offset. If you are triggered by sexual assault and all those kind of things, it does deal with some pretty grim subject matter in graphic detail. You might want to avoid this one. But I was kind of fascinated for it because... I believe its UK premiere was at Fright Fest last year. I wasn't at Fright Fest, but I was here. It was the final film of Fright Fest, but I was hearing all kinds of crazy reports. I was kind of hearing that it's like a zombie film, but if all the zombies were Miloš from a Serbian film. That's an absolutely wild claim, and I would not say that it goes that far. But it certainly goes far enough that it ventures into what I would consider extreme horror. It's very bloody, very graphic. There's not too much in the way of graphic sexual assault, but that is in there, and it's a thing that if that's something that you avoid, then avoid this is what I'm saying, basically. But it's kind of an interesting one. It's just come out on Shudder. So, like, I'm not sure if it's a Shudder in the UK, actually. I should have checked that. It's certainly on Shudder in the US. I watch with a VPN and all that. And this film is fucking alive. It's very, very busy. But the thing it put me most in mind of would be Dead Set, which would be the Charlie Brooker zombie series from way back, set in the Big Brother house back when Big Brother was on Channel 4. All that kind of thing. I think they did it one year as like, it was like a Halloween thing, like, and in the 5 day, it was a 5 episode thing, and they played an episode each day running up to Halloween, and it was pretty exceptional. I think that's on Netflix now. You can check it out. And this, I'd say it certainly got a similar setup to it, because you've got the guy, you've got the girl, they're separated pretty early on, and they're, you know, one guy's like in the middle of nowhere, and this girl's in this hospital where people are shacking up, trying to avoid the people that have been taken over by this virus, and doing all kinds of mad shit, all kinds of terrible, terrible unpleasantness. And they're all trying to avoid it, but obviously we know what happens when you shack up during a kind of zombie infestation. Things sneak in. So obviously it all goes tits up, and they're trying to reunite and all that. But at the same time, there's this other kind of like dual story where a guy who before even getting infected with the zombie virus, or the flipping, like, the rapey virus, or whatever it fucking is, the derangement virus. It's called the Alvin virus, in it. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm not entirely sure why anyone would make a film about a virus that starts in that area of Asia that's possibly built in a lab and spreads everywhere and causes kind of chaos. That's probably unrelated to absolutely anything going on in the real world. But yeah, anyway, there's one dude who's like been sacked for like sexual harassment that day before catching the virus, is bitching about it on the train, and then suddenly the urges start creeping over him. He suddenly starts feeling the effects of this virus, and he jams a fucking umbrella into some bird's eye socket, gouges her eye out completely, waving it around on the end of the umbrella, and then it all kicks off from there. And in what seems to be kind of a parallel between like the main plot, he seems to be seeking out this woman whose eye he gouged out so he can fuck the socket. So that lets you know at least the level of depravity that we're dealing with in this film. And when you say it out loud and you're not showing the examples, it does sound pretty horrible. I will say this is very much only one for people with a particularly strong stomach. You know, if that's not you, don't bother. But I gotta say, this is a really, really, really fun film. I think I described it on Letterboxd as Dead Set Gets Its End Wet. It is fucking live. It is fucking end-to-end carnage. There is blood all over the shop. There is zombies vomiting into wounds. There is people getting knocked over with cars. There's all kinds of chaotic things happening in this. And if that's your bag, then this is a particularly exceptional example of a film that you definitely need to be checking out. As I say, you can check it out on Shudder now, so you can check it out that way. I would categorize it as extreme horror, but yeah. So know that going in, like. See, I was been really, really hyped to see this film since I heard people going on about it in Fright Fest, all this kind of thing. I'm really buzzing to see it as soon as I possibly could. And it came out on VOD, but I saw it was scheduled for Shudder later, so I hung tight to wait for that. So I caught it last Thursday, and I watched it before going to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is the second film I'm going to be reviewing that day. And I will say that The Sadness is the better film of those two. Although my watching of this before going to watch the other one might have affected it in some way. It definitely could be a fucking thing. But anyway, this one is pretty gnarly. I gave this one 4.5 stars out of 5. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, moving on. Let's talk about the other film that I watched on Thursday, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everything Everywhere All at Once concerns an aging Chinese immigrant who is swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes connecting with the lives she could have led. It is directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Shiner and stars Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Hsu, Hugh Kwan, sorry if the pronunciation's bollocksed on that, James Hong, legend, and Jamie Lee Curtis, another legend. Right, let's keep this one 100. This is A24 trying to make a Marvel movie that's also The Matrix with an old Chinese woman. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. It's pretty clear what they're trying to do here, and I'm on board with it. It is pretty groovy, but I think I made a big mistake watching it the same day as I watched The Sadness, because a lot of people seem to have, seem to care about this film a lot more than me, and I think that might be because they didn't watch The Sadness the same day. I'll be honest, The Sadness is a very live film, so seeing a film that doesn't have as much in the way of bloody massacres going on, I wasn't really feeling that. But I will say, visually, this film is incredible. In terms of action, this film is incredible, and the acting is fantastic. We've got some absolute OGs in here. Michelle Yeoh as the main character absolutely kills it. The supporting cast is also pretty great. I mean, obviously, anything with James Hong in, absolute flipping legend. He flipping back since Blade Runner, I have respected this guy. He's been very much assigned the role of character actor, although he's a very versatile, talented guy. But because of how Hollywood has been in the era that he's been active, he's kind of been assigned certain very specific roles because of how he looks and his ethnicity and all that kind of thing. I could have done with seeing a bit more of him flexing in this, but nonetheless, it's always good to see him. Jamie Lee Curtis was particularly entertaining in this. It concerned, the main woman, played by Michelle Yeoh, is trying to do her taxes, and that's when it all kicks off, goes in some multiverse shit or parallel dimensions, all that Danny Myers fuck shit. Danny Myers would have so many fucking bars about this. And it's kind of interesting to see Jamie Lee Curtis, because obviously getting on in years now, but we're seeing her, at the minute, recently we've seen her in Halloween and Halloween Kills, where she's, getting on, but, she's this survivalist character who's just been spending all her years devoted to murder. This shows her as, a dumpy old broad that works in admin. And to be honest, that's kind of cool, because it segues into action sequences involving her. The action sequences in this are particularly fantastic. I was vibing off that. There's a lot of kung fu in there. They've done that thing where they get some real martial artists in, and they sort of face swap with the actual actors. So you do get to see some incredible fight sequences in this. And I was quite gassed for a lot of it. I saw it in the cinema. I caught it at The View in Cheshire Oaks, because that's my local cinema for this kind of things. Obviously, we've got the Story House, but they don't watch the kind of films that I watch. And it's kind of interesting that this whole multiverse thing is going on at the minute. I do wonder, is it would this have got greenlit if it wasn't something that Marvel films were pushing? And that does kind of concern me. Are A24 trying to follow Marvel? I don't know. I have mixed feelings towards A24. I often use the phrase A24 bullshit, and it's not a fair thing to say. I enjoy, to be honest, I enjoy most A24 films. I just think that, most A24 fans, the particularly online variety, are fucking insufferable people. I really don't like this term, elevated horror. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once isn't a horror film. It's more of a sci-fi action movie. But I don't like this term elevated. It implies that you're better than something. Like, I'm like, sorry, the Witch, the Robert Eggers one, is not better than Scanners 3, The Takeover. It's just not. I mean, like, but admittedly, that's because The Witch has no kung fu in it. This film, it has kung fu in it. It has action sequences in it. It has some pretty live action sequences in it. And I find it kind of interesting because I reckon, like, there's a lot of people that are, like, going to really be riding out for this film that are also, like, the kind of people who are too good to watch superhero films. Don't get me wrong, I slag off superhero films all the time as well. But it's one of those, like, you know, it's kind of interesting that A24 is, like, attached to this. I do think this is a very good film, and I did enjoy it a lot. I do think I shouldn't have watched it directly after watching The Sadness, because my levels are set different. It's a thing, like, it's with gauges. I think everyone's got their gauges, like, you know, you've got your levels set, like slow burn films could be fantastic, but if you watch, say, The Lighthouse directly after Time Cop, and if you've been vibing with Time Cop, then you're not going to be feeling The Lighthouse to the same degree. It's the same reason I can't watch, like, most Greta Gerwig films, because I've normally watched a slasher movie that day. You know, it's one of those. So I definitely think that's impacted it, because, like, I gave Everything Everywhere All at Once, I gave it 3.5 stars, which, honestly, I think was fair. But I've gone back and, like, I look through Letterboxd. All my mates seem to be rating it a lot higher. So I'm getting the feeling that maybe it's a context thing. Maybe I should have, maybe I do need a rewatch. I've noticed flipping Robert Woods, the homie Robert Woods, shout him out each and every and go and watch his film. I've noticed he's rated it 4.5 stars. He doesn't rate anything 4.5 stars. I think I might have watched this film at the wrong time, so it might be off. But that being said, even with it being watched at the wrong time, I still enjoyed it quite a lot. But yeah, anyway, like, the Multiverse thing, it's obviously big. Like, I mean, the film I watched most recently before this was in the cinema, was Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness, directed by Sam Raimi. So maybe I'll chuck a little review for that in here next. Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth Olsen, and a load of other people. It is directed by the legend Sam Raimi, and the plot is as follows. Dr. Stephen Strange casts a forbidden spell that opens the doorway to the multiverse, including alternate versions of himself whose threat to humanity is too great even for the combined forces of Strange, Wong, and Wanda Maximoff. Shite! 2.5 stars, and 2 of those stars are for the Bruce Campbell cameo. So yeah, that is the KSC podcast review show with some things I've seen recently. We will be back with the normal format with a guest, all them kind of things, as of next week. As I say, check the Patreon. We're going to be releasing episodes early on there, and you're going to want to be subscribed to that, because we've got some cool guests coming in, like good friends of mine from Battle Rap, all the cool people. Have a good one anyway. I'm Kinell. This is Sinister Cinema. Safe.